Hello everyone and welcome to part 2 of week 10 resume writing for exploring your future. So you should have already listened to the first part of this video series and you should have read through the examples of bad resumes and good resumes that I had provided, and now we're going to talk about them and discuss what we like and dislike about these resumes, what's working and what doesn't. So these should be some interesting examples here for you. So this is the first one, bad resume 1. So this is Michaela Gassler, it looks like. So the first thing that I notice when I look at the top of her resume here, she has that she's from Allentown, Pennsylvania. She doesn't list a full address. Normally for the header section of your resume, you would want to list your address and your contact information, so she does have her phone number listed here. But if you do take a look at her email account, it looks like she has looks like skate4fun@gmail.com. So that's not really an example of a professional email address that we would want to use for a resume. So I would recommend either using your Cedar Crest email for now, so whatever it is, at cedarcrest.edu, that's perfectly fine for now. If after you graduate, or if you prefer to kind of keep that separate, you can make an email account that has, really just kind of like a basic address to it. So mine, for example, is sarahfields417@gmail.com, kind of nondescript, that just has your name, but nothing that, could be misinterpreted or that could possibly be considered unprofessional. So that's just something that I notice about her resume right off the bat. Now, a couple other things when we take a look at this document here. It's kind of bare, and you do want to have some white space on a resume. You don't want it to look too crammed because that can impact your readability. But it doesn't really seem like she's going into a ton of detail here about, within the different categories of her resume. She does have a summary section, so on some resumes this is called an objective. You can do this. It's really not mandatory by any means, and in fact, I'd say people are kind of getting away from that at this point, not so much including that objective on there. Typically, when you apply to a job anyway, there's going to be a cover letter portion where you can kind of get into something that is more of like an objective but kind of fleshed out, so it kind of, in my mind, is a little bit redundant and not necessary. I don't personally use it, but if you have a really great objective statement and you want to put it on there, go for it. But again, you certainly don't have to. A couple of things. Now, this student does have some impressive facts on her resume. The content of the resume is good. She's saying that she is fluent in 2 languages, which is awesome. She's got experience in nutrition, and it looks like some of these things under her employment history are pretty good. But she's not really showcasing it. She has some errors here, so she should say, I have 2 years of experience. I'm not sure what this apostrophe is doing here, and I think she just kind of could have done a better job. You do have to be careful with the language that you're using when you write your resume. So she says here, I'm fluent in 2 languages, which makes me good with peoples of different backgrounds. Like, okay, that's fine. Or you could say, it makes me skilled in working with diverse populations. There's just kind of, I think, better ways she could have even worded that piece of it. The other main issue that I'm seeing here for her is that she has not really formatted this consistently. So she has her education here, which is fine, although she has this line kind of, going through the middle here, whereas the other, you'll notice that where else she has her dates listed for her employment history, it's just right aligned. So I'm not sure why she kind of had this line here. It just kind of makes the formatting look messy and inconsistent. Now, she does have some bullet points here, but, she's missing this one on the last one, and I just don't think she really fleshed out any of her employment history in a way that could have been more helpful to her. And then again, she's got some bullet points in this section, but not under her hobbies and interests, so, I think that this could have been formatted better from that regard as well. And I'd say this is an example of a resume that just isn't quite enough, doesn't quite have enough content, although the content that is there is good stuff. There are attractive things about this person's employment history and personal history, but she's not really selling it. So that is the first example of a bad resume. So we can look at bad resume number 2 here. Okay. Okay, so this is Olivia's resume. So a couple things that do stand out. Right away when you look at this, I believe this is the Papyrus font. This is one of the ones that we do want to stay away from. It's not really a great font in terms of readability, and when you use this type of font, it's just not considered professional. Again, you want to stick with those standard fonts, those fonts such as Arial, Times New Roman, Calibri, and there's other ones you can use, but it should have a pretty standard appearance to it, and it shouldn't be anything too out of the ordinary or too flashy. So font is no good on this one. Additionally, she has some color that is not necessary and I think is a little distracting. There are some instances, and you can look up on different templates online, where you can use some color to accentuate and highlight certain things. The light blue here I don't think is particularly professional or attractive in this case. So I would say, just to be safe, stick with black and white. Don't get into the color. Now, a couple other things here on her header. She does not have her phone number listed, so she would want to add that to this section. This is a very minor detail, but I'm going to point this out as well. So you'll notice here that she has her email address, and the email address in and of itself is fine. She's using her CedarCrest email account, it looks like, so, no issues there. However, she does have this hyperlinked. So the hyperlink just makes it look a little bit messy. It's considered more professional to not have it hyperlinked, and by hyperlinked I mean in blue with this, the underline underneath, and, you can click on it and then it would open up, a link to email this person. So that's kind of something that, this is a very, very small detail, but you do want to remove the hyperlink when you do add your email address. So again, small detail, but, something worth mentioning. Okay, so let's take a look here at the rest of her resume. She has, I'd say the formatting's a little bit more consistent on this one than it was the last one. It does look like everything's in the correct reverse chronological order, so she does have her most recent stuff on the top, followed by her work experience, and then, the least recent stuff on the bottom. So it's in that correct order, which is good. But now when we look a little bit closer into these sections here, you'll see that she did add her GPA. If you have a strong GPA, it is a good idea to add it. However, this student has a 2.1, so that's not really, the best GPA. Probably something that she would honestly be better off just leaving her degree there, her education history, but just omitting the GPA part. So the rule of thumb is that if your GPA is a 3.0 or above, then it is helpful and you should be listing it. If your GPA is lower than that, then you can omit it. So if it's, 2 point something or lower than that, then you do just want to leave it off. Since you don't want to highlight the fact that maybe, not all of your grades were so great. So just something to keep in mind, when you're making the decision as to whether or not to list that. Okay, so she has her high school. Now this person is saying that she graduated in May 2020, so at this point she wouldn't want to be listing her high school, but again, for you guys, you can currently use high school experience up until about your junior year. So for you, it would be okay. Now, her work experience, I think some of this is a little bit comical, the way that she wrote it. Make drinks for people who are thirsty. Okay. She kind of has some descriptions that are a little bit vague. And in my recommendation in that regard would be to try to elevate the language a little bit, try to sell it a little bit. You don't want to do this in a way that's too wordy, too verbose. You do want to keep it concise, but there are ways that you can make it sound better. So, rather than saying making drinks for people who are thirsty, she could say, complete orders per customer specifications, or who knows. There's ways that you can elevate that. There's ways you can make it sound a little bit more professional, and the people who are thirsty part is just silly. Something else that I noticed here on her resume is, looks like she was a cashier for Pizza Palace, and then she has here, quit job because I was leaving for college. So that's not something you would want to put on a resume. It should be hopefully indicative enough by her work history that, she wasn't in college at that time. And you don't really want to list that directly on a resume. Now, you will probably get asked this in an interview. Why are you leaving your current job, or why did you quit this job? And there are different ways that we can address that question, which we can talk about when we get to interviews. However, you don't want to put it on a resume. And not that she's doing this here, but you always want to stay away from disparaging any past places of employment or saying anything negative, since that can kind of get you into some trouble there. So, okay, so I guess that about covers it for the bad resume. We can go into some of our good examples. Okay, so here is good resume number 1. So this resume has a very standard formatting, and this is really something that, especially for your first resume, I would recommend having your sections look pretty similar to what she has here. Now, one thing that you can do, although you do have to be careful because there's different, kind of stuff available out there, there are good examples of templates and bad examples. If you find a template online that is really that you think is really attractive and really professional and you want to utilize that template, by all means you can do that. When you're doing your resume assignment for this class, don't hesitate to use templates. I'm not asking you to reinvent the wheel or anything. Just make sure that if you do find an online template to use, that it looks good, that it's professional, that it falls under the specifications that we had discussed in this lesson. But generally speaking, this formatting is pretty good. This is pretty standard and probably a good idea to try to follow something like this or similar to this when you're writing your first resume. So her header section, she does have her name, she's got her other information, email is professional and not hyperlinked. Okay, let's see. Okay, so something that might be helpful, and this really depends on what classes you've taken, but if you've taken classes, say, you're a nutrition major and you're applying for a nutrition internship, then maybe listing some of the specific coursework that you've done already in nutrition is helpful. So you can put a related coursework, whatever is relevant to, again, that specific job that you're applying to. So that is something that you can utilize. And it looks like she has a lot of great experience, and she has everything very professionally worded. Everything is in reverse chronological order. She does have her verbs correct. So she has here, this is a past employment experience. She assisted, past tense, doctors with patient support, including checking blood work, eye drops, insulin injections. She has this really kind of well-written, it's concise, but it sounds professional. So if you can kind of try to emulate that, that's great. She does have her volunteer experience on here, and some other skills, so she is fluent in English and Spanish. If you do have a second language, absolutely, you should showcase that on your resume, so I would recommend doing that. And she does say she is proficient in Microsoft Excel Suite and specifying which of the software she has used in the past. So, that's something that you can put as well. If you do put, proficient in MS Office or in Microsoft Office, you just want to kind of not be vague about it. It's good if you can kind of specify, otherwise it just kind of seems like a filler that a lot of people could put, because most of us have used Microsoft Office at one point. But if you can kind of detail that a little bit more, I would recommend that. Okay, so that is Maria's resume. Let's take a look at our second good example. Okay. Okay, so you see here Skylar's resume. So again, she's got her contact information here. Now this is actually an example of using color in a way that is well done. So you see here that her name is in sort of a very dark blue, and that does kind of emphasize it a little bit, but it's not anything that's too vibrant, it's not too crazy, it's not, way too attention grabbing or anything. So she kind of has utilized color, but in a tasteful and professional way. So if you're comfortable doing that, you can certainly try it. Again, if you want to kind of stick on the safe side, you can, just omit that piece or not do that. But this is an example of it where it's well done. Again, you can see that she has her education experience, her leadership experience, so this is her employment history here. Very similar to Maria's resume, where she has everything quite well formatted, everything's consistent, she's not, using different types of bullet points, all the font is consistent, she's using bullet points everywhere that she needs to be. Again, that reverse chronological order. And now this person has also included conferences that they've attended. If you have attended maybe our our forensic science symposium or one of the events or conferences that you've had a chance to and you would like to place that on there, that's great. This person also lists skills, so she is CPR and first aid certified. She's got some additional technology here. You'll notice she says she's experienced in JRM, so that is a software. Okay, so my time is almost up for this video, so we will get back to